Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've done in terms of research for English learners in Riverside County and what you've learned from that research?
Wow, we've done a lot of research here at the county office with regards to our English learners. In fact, you have in the county about 425,000 plus students, and of those, in the year 2011-12, we had about 21% of those students were English learners. And so we do have a significant population. That's about 87,000 or more kids that are English learners in our county. And every one of them, their parents are counting on us to do our best to help them move from their current level of proficiency in English to full proficiency and academic achievement that's reflecting their strong level of proficiency in English. We also have about a little bit over 18% of our students in our county that are redesignated, formerly English learners. So when you combine the two together, it's about, just a little bit under 40% of our students in our county either are currently English learners or were English learners in the past. That's a large imperative for us and as a county to really be well prepared to address the needs that they have, their language needs and their academic needs as well. When 2 years ago, I was really challenged because I noticed that our kids in the county were not moving ahead academically. And in fact, as one of my roles that I play here at the county is I'm a co-lead for our Title III work, which is a title under the No Child Left Behind that looks specifically at the education of English learners and supporting it. So in digging a little bit further and doing more research, I found that we had a large group of students that are English learners that had plateaued in their acquisition of English. Typically where they were plateauing was based on the California English Language Development Test, the CELT. They were plateauing at about a level 3 or an intermediate. At that level, the kids can carry on a conversation with us in English. What they lack is the academic language and the ability to use those complex compound sentences, and their writing suffers, and they're definitely not reading at grade level and comprehending. So what happens is when the kids are at level 1 or 2, when they're just beginning to learn English, the teachers often have a greater sense of urgency to differentiate and support the kids because they know that the kids clearly have language needs. But once the students can carry on conversations with the teachers, often they don't make that disconnect between the amount of language support they need and their language development. In other words, they think because they speak English, they're going to understand every word that you use in English in the classroom, which is very much not true. So what we found when we did the data and the research, we found that 41% of our English learners in Riverside County are what we call long-term English learners. They've been in U.S. schools for at least 5 years, and they've not yet reached English proficiency based on the CELT, which is an early advanced or an advanced level with none of the subdomains, listening, speaking, reading, or writing, below a level 3 or an intermediate. That's one of the criteria for them to be reclassified as a reclassified or redesignated fluent English proficient student. Why is that important? Well, for those kids that don't ever go beyond a level 3, their chance of ever being reclassified and being able to compete with their native English-speaking peers is greatly diminished, to the point that when we look at our dropouts in the county, the largest subgroup represented among those are our English learners that are dropping out. Why? Because they've gotten the message for a long time in schools that they don't have what it takes to be successful, and so they just fall, they fade away, they leave. And that's something that our county office has really been working on and supporting districts and trying to reduce that dropout rate, as well as to intervene and be able to, first of all, identify who their long-term English learners are and be able to intervene on their behalf to try and get them jump-started with their language acquisition to get it up to higher levels, which should have a corresponding effect on their academic achievement.
When you're looking for those who are plateauing, is there a certain grade level or period in a K-12 where you see that happen mostly?
Exactly. Because it's typically the kids that have been around 5 or 6 or 7 or more years in U.S. schools and haven't reached that level. So we at the county have a current definition of a long-term English learner as a student who's been 5 years or more in U.S. schools and not yet reclassified. This past year there was a piece of legislation, AB 2193, that was passed that had a more detailed definition of a long-term English learner, and that is still in the process of being put into effect in the state. And it looks at them a little bit further down the road. But our districts were really interested in intervening sooner versus later. And so one of the things that we've been doing is I formed a long-term English learner task force here at the county where representatives from the districts in our county that are concerned about their long-term English learner percentages come to learn what we have. 4 things that we work on at every task force meeting. One is looking at leadership. What's going on in your district? What are you doing? And how are you influencing, impacting what's going on with long-term English learners? We look at the most current research, not only what's out in the field, but we're actually conducting research ourselves in partnership with key data systems here in the county. We also then look at best practices. What are some of the best practices that are going on in our districts in the county that are being successful, reducing the achievement gap and being able to move forward? And then finally, we look at, there's one other and I can't think of it at this particular moment.
Well, we'll pick it up on the next video.
Okay.